The following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the April 18th meeting of the Cary Town Council, and at this time I'll recognize Ms. Robinson for our ceremonial opening. Mrs. Robinson.
Thank you so much, Mayor. In light of the tragedies that we've had this week, I think it would be appropriate for us to have a moment of silence, thanking each of our gods, or my God, for the freedoms that we experience here in the United States and just for the liberties that we enjoy and for all the heroic people that come to the rescue when things go wrong. So let's pray. Thank you very much. Let's pledge allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're at item A3, which is the agenda, and I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're now at the consent agenda portion of tonight's meeting. That's item B for the benefit of those watching our meeting on TV. We're going to read the consent agenda items. Keep in mind that one vote approves all of these items. Consent agenda items include approval of the minutes, approval of tax reports, calling for public hearings on owner-initiated annexations, adopting an annexation ordinance, and the Copperleaf Plan Development Rezoning Request and related comprehensive plan consistency statement. And at this time, I'll ask Mrs. Robinson and then Mr. Frantz to briefly summarize the Operations and Planning and Development Committee consent items. Mrs. Robinson.
Okay, thank you very much. We had several items that we are bringing to you under the consent agenda. The first one is the Stormwater Master Plan update, which is riveting. Everybody should read it. It's very good. The second one is the petitioning to close public right-of-way policy statement 44 amendment. The next item is the recognition of reimbursement funding. The next item is a request to receive and appropriate funds in the amount of $2,500 for the UNC School of Government's GIGA grant, and that's the fiscal year 2013 project. We also have an item that pertains to the Cary Town Council. The committee unanimously recommended that we make adjustments for handling the budget and financial administration for the Cary Town Council. Also, we have the Green Level Interceptor and Pump Station Elimination Project. And our last item that we're bringing to you under consent is the contract award for Fire Station Number 2 relocation project.
Mr. Frantz?
We have one item on the consent. That's the FY 2014 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan.
Okay, at this time, I would accept a motion to approve the entire consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. And I did that rather quickly. If you want an item pulled, please let me know in the discussion time. If not, we'll go ahead with this motion.
It doesn't, the one item that I'd like to speak to, the electronic meetings, was already off of consent.
That's right.
That's correct. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We now move to recognitions, reports, and presentations. We're at item C1, and at this time, I'll ask Mr. Smith to recognize our visiting culinary students from France.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure to invite Jeff Hadley and the entire Le Touquet culinary student delegation up to the podium. And the Sister Cities folks, I see the president and the liaison here. Please join us up here. What a crowd. Hello. Hello. Honey, huh? Yeah. Hi. Mayor and Council, the Sister Cities program is very active in Cary, and the Culinary Exchange is a tremendously successful program that began in 1993. And Jeff Hadley of Wake Tech is instrumental in organizing the exchange. Cary is hosting our Le Touquet students for 3 weeks. Then in October, we will reciprocate, and they will be hosted. Le Touquet will then be hosting some Wake Tech students. Those are tough words for me, folks. You give me a break. The students have been working in food preparation and service at the Umstead Hotel, at the Washington Duke Inn, at the Renaissance Raleigh, and the Prestonwood Country Club. The students working at the Umstead and Prestonwood have been placed with Wes and Lindsay Smith, Cary residents, and the others are staying at hotels where they are working. Before returning to France, the group will spend 2 days in New York City. Annie, it's good to have you with us again, and Pascal, thanks for assisting Annie as chaperone. With us also are Barbara Shepard, president of Sister Cities Association, and Joni Conwell, Sister Cities liaison for Le Touquet, and they're also with us today back here. Both of these women have worked very hard to make this a successful exchange. And I want to thank both of them. I know they're there somewhere. There you wave to me. There you go. I want to thank both of you for your service. It's really very appreciative. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff to do the honors and to introduce the students, because if you think I'm going to try to remember those names and pronounce them, we're going to have a problem. So, Jeff, I'd like to turn it over to you. Okay. I'm ready. You're ready. It's all yours.
Where's my names?
Those are mine. Those are mine.
Well, I'll just ask
You have to
them
wing it. Are these
to
yours?
come up. No,
Oh.
no. Pamela? Geraldine? Forget. Caroline? François? Bastien? Emily? Jérôme? Alex? Matthias? And Christophe. All from the Le Touquet culinary and lycée hôtelier. We're always happy to have them here. As Jack said, the exchange started in '93, so 20 years. It's to me, that's a pretty big milestone. I was one of the first hosts way back when I was working in the business, and now I'm able to coordinate that. And it's always a pleasure to have them, and it's even a bigger pleasure to go there. So thank you very much. And I think, Emily, you have a few words to say as well.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to say thank you for being here. We really enjoy the United States. You're really... Comment on dit accueil? Accueil. You're really welcoming, and everything is fine, and the sharing is there. Thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of Cary, we do welcome you here. We have a strong Sister Cities program, and this is one of the foundation blocks of that Sister Cities program. And I know the culinary exchange is very important, but friendships are also part of this. I think I hosted for the first time in 2000 or 2001, and we still are in touch with her. My wife visited her. She had her second child recently, and so my wife travels to Europe a lot. And Madame Chattel and I have known each other probably over 10 years, a long time. So it's a great friendship, and I do hope the ones that are staying with the host family will stay in touch with the host family and experience all you can while you're here and have a good time, because I know you guys work hard. I haven't hosted many times. I know that you guys are working several hours a day, but have a good time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all you do, Jeff, and the hostesses of our exchange going over there. And we look forward to seeing you again next year, and best of luck to all of you in your studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, I'll let you in on a little secret. You would advise them to have a good time. They're leaving now to go to a party, and we have to stay at work. Yeah. So, I'm a little jealous of that.
A couple of us could leave and you'd still be a quorum.
Move this council meeting on.
While you're at the podium, we would like for you to proclaim April as Donate Life Month, and I know that's very near and dear to you.
Thank you, Mayor. This year, since I help with that organization, I'm going to read the proclamation. And do I have it here? Oh, it's right here. Never mind. Thank you. I really appreciate, as an organ donor recipient, this is near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate the opportunity to read this proclamation. And it goes as follows. Whereas according to the United Network of Organ Sharing, approximately 117,748 men, women, and children in the United States currently need life-saving organ transplants, and 36,000 of these people are North Carolinians. Whereas an average of 18 people awaiting transplant die each day because there's a severe shortage of donated organs, every 10 minutes another name is added to the national list. And whereas providing facts about donation and dispelling misinformation and myths is the key to making an informed decision about becoming a donor. One organ donor can save the lives of up to 8 people and improve many more lives through tissue, blood, bone marrow, and cornea donations. And whereas the North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicles plays a critical role with 4.3 million North Carolinians in the state donor registry having already registered, North Carolinians are encouraged to get the facts about donation, discuss their wishes with their family, and sign up as donors while conducting business at the DMV or online at www.donatelife.org. And whereas healthcare professionals, volunteers, educators, government agencies, faith-based and community groups, and private organizations can join forces to boost the number of organ, tissue, and eye, blood, bone marrow, and stem cell donors throughout our state. Now, therefore, I, Cary Town Member Jack Smith, an organ donor recipient, on behalf of the mayor and the entire town council, do hereby proclaim April 2013 as Donate Life Month in the town of Cary and commend this observance to our citizens, proclaim this the 18th day of November. Thank you all for having the privilege of reading that. And as you know, it was Christmas Eve 5 years ago, so I can only wish that you all consider being an organ donor and think about it the next time you register. And that's, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I see Mr. Ulma coming to the podium, and Ms. Tufts, and someone else, I don't know the name. This is agenda item C3. It's the Government Innovation Grant and Award presentation.
Thank you, Mayor.
It's that.
Dan Mathis.
Stay
Simpatico with Don.
I'm sorry.
This is alter ego.
Caught me off guard.
As you know, several years ago, the town developed the virtual interactive planner to help citizens, interested folks, the development community navigate through our planning and development processes. VIP has received accolades from across the country and recognition and presentations in conferences. And we received another one recently, so Ms. Shannon Tufts from UNC School of Government is here to officially present the award that we received last month. And Mr. Mathis, who's been instrumental in leading the project with planning in the planning department, but also coordinating with public information and technology services. So as a lot of our projects are, it's a group effort to be able to get the recognition that all the town staff and the council deserve for developing a program like this. So, Shannon?
Actually, it's Dr. Shannon Tufts.
Nobody.
No one knows. It's once in a while you get an opportunity to use it.
Should use it.
My parents would be very happy. And I will tell you that I had the same reaction to Dan with the face hair, because he's actually in the VIP when you're doing it. And I was so confused as to who that person was. And I kept looking at him in the audience and looking at the person on the screen, and it didn't connect until finally I said, "Is this new?" So I am here on behalf of the School of Government. I'm a faculty member there, and I actually run a group called the Center for Public Technology. I've done a lot of work here in Cary and have been in front of many of you before. So we came up with an idea probably 3 years ago to try to recognize governments for innovative work that they were doing and create a vehicle for sharing that innovation. And so it's not necessarily funding ideas that people have that they would like to do, it's actually taking ideas that are already in existence that people have already put in place and having those ideas be able to be replicated by sharing information. So actually, Bill Stice is in the audience, as you know, your Technology Services Director, and he is the past president of an organization called Nickel-GISA. I should probably slow down and tell you what that is, because it's a horrible acronym, but it stands for the North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Association. So when we came up with this idea to recognize governments, we went to the North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Association, the Local Government Federal Credit Union here in our state, and we actually had another partner come in after they heard about the work that was being done, and they all donated funds for us to give away to governments that were doing really innovative work. And this year, the VIP project was one of the major award winners. Jeff wants me to make sure you know. They were in a tiebreaker, and they were competing against children.
Oh.
And you know how that goes.
With puppies, right?
So it was a really tough decision. We used an external panel of judges, and they really wrestled with that because they thought what VIP had done was probably one of the most innovative things they'd ever seen in government. I think that speaks true to everything that happens here at the town of Cary. I think you guys are amazing, and the School of Government certainly thinks that you're amazing. And I want to give this award to Dan for his wonderful work, and maybe he'll shave his face now. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. No speech? No? Dr. Tubbs, thank you so much for presenting the award and being here this evening. It meant a lot to us and to our staff, Dan and Jeff. We really appreciate you putting emphasis on this type of innovation. It really helps our citizens get what we're trying to give them, and that's information and accurate information. So thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to move to our next item, and Mr. Yerha will now present the Fair Housing Month proclamation. Mr. Yerha.
Thank you, Mayor. Is Reverend Tyner here? If you would join me at the podium, please. It's my pleasure to welcome Reverend Charles Tyner with us this evening. He is the pastor and executive director of the White Oak Foundation. He's a very busy man doing all these wonderful things that he does for Cary, and so we're really happy that you have the time to join us this evening. 45 years ago, last week, a week ago today, was the adoption of the Federal Fair Housing Act. Time flies, because I'm of an age when I remember when that happened. Of course, I was very young and naive in those days. Now I'm old and naive. But I remember when that happened, I said to myself, we really need a law for this? I mean, there were 2 years of arguing and fussing back and forth whether we should need this act or not need it. I'm thinking, how could there be so many people who could be in favor of discriminating in housing because of race, color, sex, et cetera, et cetera? It really showed me at that young age that there was a lot more to the world than I knew in my little 5,000-person town that I was growing up in. And the events leading up to this Federal Fair Housing Act really helped me change my life, I think, in a lot of ways. If you were alive in 1968, or if you remember 1968, you probably don't remember April 11th when the Federal Fair Housing Act was established, but I bet you remember what happened 7 days before that, on April 4th, 1968. That was the day that saw the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it was that event that really served as a catalyst to get this act passed. President Johnson was trying for quite a while, and he finally got the powers to be to agree, and as a memorial, in President Johnson's words, got this act passed a week after the assassination. And I think 45 years later, we can say it was a very fitting memorial to Dr. King. And every April, beginning with 1969, has been celebrated as Federal Fair Housing Month in the United States. And to that end, I'd like to read this proclamation. It's a brief one, and then present this to Pastor Tyner, and if he has any words to say, I'd be happy to hear from him. Whereas, April 2013 marks the 45th anniversary of the Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968 and the 30th anniversary of the North Carolina Fair Housing Act. Both laws prohibit discrimination in housing because of race, color, sex, religion, national origin, handicap, and familial status. Whereas the town of Cary, concerned citizens, and the housing industry are working diligently to make the dream of fair housing opportunities indeed a reality for all town residents. And whereas by supporting and promoting fair housing and equal opportunity, we are contributing to the overall health of our town. Now therefore, I, Ed Yerha, on behalf of Harold Weinbrecht, Jr., Mayor of the town of Cary, North Carolina, and on behalf of the entire Cary Town Council, do hereby proclaim April 2013 as Fair Housing Month in the town of Cary, and urge all citizens to recognize the accomplishments and commit our efforts towards equal housing opportunity for all individuals. Proclaimed this 18th day of April 2013.
To the mayor and to all of you members of the council, let me say to you thank you for this award tonight in recognition of fairness in housing. As you know, our organization believes that every person who desires to own their own home should have the opportunity to do so. Thank you, Town of Cary, for letting us help you to assure that this takes place in Cary. We will continue to do all we can to help Cary to be #1. And we ask for your continued support as we too help bring people to live in Cary, to enjoy this wonderful place, and to have them to know that there's many opportunities in Cary. Thank you, and we shall continue to work hard to see that this take place. There are some persons who work every day in assuring that this take place in Cary. You don't even know it. And those persons are present with us tonight. They work with the HUD program that we have, with the funds that we have to assure that people have opportunity for housing in Cary, and we shall continue to do just that. Thank you again.
And thank you. Reverend Tyler, we want to thank you as well. I know you're persistent. I've seen you just about every year since I've been affiliated with this council, and your persistence has paid off in your great leadership, not only for this community, but for the White Oak Foundation and for affordable housing in Cary, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. We now move to item number 5, that's C5 on the agenda, and Mr. Shivers, Manager Operational Update. Mr. Shivers.
Thank you, Mayor. The report this evening will consist of our budget update, and I'd like to call on our Budget Director, Scott Fogelman, to make that report.
Good evening, Council. We'll provide an update of the general fund operating margin for where we think fiscal year 2013 will end up given this point in time. And that operating margin is defined as revenues less expenses yielding the remainder, or operating margin. And we'll do this in graphical format with the black bars representing margin growth or increases since the adopted budget, and red bars representing margin decline. We adopted the fiscal year 2013 budget with a margin of 0, meaning revenues equal expenditures. Our first black bar is building permits, about $620,000 better than our budget figure of $2.9 million. So we continued better performance than our budget expectations thus far this fiscal year. Our sales taxes also are performing a little bit better than budget for the year, about 4.6% at this point, better than our budget expectation. Our tax collections are expected to be about $410,000 better than our budget expectation as well, largely due to a higher collection rate. In addition, our billings are a little bit higher, about $190,000 better than our initial expectation, and this is based on our $21 billion tax base here in the town of Cary. Our variable rate debt savings on the interest expense side are performing a little bit better than budget. We expected to be paying about 0.3% in interest expense, and we're still continuing to hover in about the 0.15% range for that debt. So certainly a good decision that continues to pay off. Our privilege license fee revenues are about $75,000 better than expected, just under 5% better than our budget expectation. Offsetting those are our red bar legal contracted services, a little bit higher than expected when we began the budget year, necessary to take care of those legal expenses that came up throughout the year, with our current year-end operating margin of $1.09 million, and on our operating budget of $121.8 million, that's about a 0.9% better than our budget expectation performance. And what we thought we would do tonight is, this is a snapshot of how we're managing this particular budget year as we go through the year against our initial budget expectations. What it does not capture is our long-term trends in revenue forecasts. So while the general fund margin that we just looked at looks at budget versus actual for 1 year in revenues and expenses, what we'd like to do briefly is show you the historical general fund revenues, breaking it up into 5 major revenue categories and looking at the changes over time. And we'll do this, amazingly, in graphical format again, as you might imagine. Our historical general fund revenues, looking at from 2000 to our budget estimates for 2013. And our major revenue categories here are sales tax, down at the bottom. Our investment earnings are layered on top of that. Our building permits and fees, and then popping up to the top, our ad valorem taxes, and then all the other general fund revenues, primarily made up of intergovernmental revenues and our solid waste and recycling fees that we collect throughout the year. So from 2000 to 2001, pretty good growth in the $75 million range. You remember the now comparatively slight recession that we had in the early 2000s caused a dip in our O2 revenue, but by fiscal year 2003, our general fund revenues had pretty much recovered from the deficit that they saw generated in the '02 recession. Then came the great years of the early 2000s where our revenue growth actually took off in terms of building permit activity and our tax base. All major revenue sources actually began to increase quite substantially. In fact, over that time period, an average revenue growth in our general fund of 7% per year was experienced. And then what we all know happened, the recession occurred and really slowed our revenue growth. Ad valorem taxes never really backed up, but our other major revenue sources, sales tax revenue, for example, you can see by FY13, we are expecting to get back to about the same level of our revenue that we had in fiscal year 2008. So it's taken us that long to recover where we saw major revenue growth in the prior years. Investment earnings back in the 2008 timeframe was about $5 million in revenue. And just due to the lower interest earnings that we're getting in the market today, it's going to be around $300,000, so a pretty big impact. Meanwhile, permits and fees, while this budget year they're performing better than our budget expectation, our total revenue is about half of what it was 5 years ago. So another major change to our revenue structure. So looking at over this time period, instead of 7% per year annual growth, we've actually seen 1.6% annual growth in our general fund revenues. Look, what if our revenues had grown by 5%? What if the Great Recession had not happened? Where would our revenues be? They would actually have grown up to $142 million versus the $124 million that we're expecting now. That's about an $18 million differential. And based on our current tax rate and our tax base, that loss of comparative revenue is equal to about 8 cents on our current tax rate. Just to give you an idea, while we continue to manage and do everything we can to manage our resources of the current year compared to our budget, over time, given the recession and other growth patterns, we've had to manage a little bit differently, looking at the trends over time as we compare those to not only the cost of doing business, but our population growth. So over the 5-year period since FY08, per capita revenues have actually decreased 10%. Our per capita expenditures have risen about 3%, and our population has increased about 3.8% per year. So our per capita revenues are dropping. We're continuing to try to absorb additional service level increases, but just wanted to back up for a moment and give you an idea of the overall historical trend in light of our current strong performance in our budget management. And with that, Mayor, that completes our operational update.
Thank you, Mr. Fogelman. Anything else to add, Mr. Shiver?
Just a comment about the second chart that you see here, and one of our purposes here is to make sure that, I think as the council already knows, but make sure our audience and citizens watching at home understand the difference between what Mr. Fogelman described as managing our current year's revenues. A very different picture that we show in the first graph versus our long-term trends that you see in this graph. And basically what this means is that we, with operating, actually with the water and sewer fund as well, although that is stronger in terms of revenues, what we really do each year is start over from the beginning. So we have to weigh what revenues we believe we will get, and that's each year we take a fresh look at that. So they may be up, they may be low. As you can see from this, they've been lagging and lagging for a number of years. And so we just want to make sure that that the public understands there is a distinction between that as we go forward, and that what we typically report on is a snapshot of 1 year, and once council has set the budget, how well we manage those funds within that particular year. So I just wanted to have those few comments, Mayor, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Very good information. Thank you, Mr. Fogelman. This takes us to Public Speaks Out. Our next 2 agenda items are Public Speaks Out, item D, and Public Hearings, item E. We've included instructions for Public Speaks Out forum on the printed agenda. And if you would like to speak at either of these forums, I would ask you at this time to take a seat in the rows to my right that are shown as reserved and follow the instructions on the agenda. Public Speaks Out speakers will have 3 minutes for their comments, and speakers may speak on any topic as long as it's not under public hearings this evening. We have a public hearings listed on the PowerPoint slide, and we would ask that you hold those comments of public hearing for the public hearings at that public hearing. There's a 3-minute time limit, as I said, for public speaks out, and there's a timer on the podium. And to be fair to all speakers, when that time is expired, I'm going to ask you to immediately conclude your comments. For the first 2.5 minutes, the light will be green, and for the last 30 seconds, the light will turn yellow. And at the end of 3 minutes, the light will flash red, and at that time, I will be interrupting you. And I'll ask all speakers in advance to adhere to our guidelines, and I would thank them for adhering to our guidelines. So at this time, I would like to open up Public Speaks Out and invite the first speaker forward. Welcome, Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, Mr. Manager. I'm Bill Fletcher. I think I've met all of you before. I am the newly appointed representative from much of Cary to the Wake County Board of Education. And I wanted to come and greet you tonight in that new role and in an effort to open communication between my board and this board, between our community and our board, and to encourage you to feel comfortable to reach out to me should you have any question about what's going on in our schools. I'll be happy to work with you any way I can. I wanted to tell you that before I was appointed to fill the vacant position, I had 2 grandchildren. And I sincerely believe that today I now have 152,000 grandchildren that are the children of our citizens in Wake County. A little heads up on what's happening in terms of growth as demonstrated by our student population. In the week following spring break this year, we registered 40% more children than in each of the last 3 years following spring break. They're coming. Families are coming. They're choosing to live here in large part because of our quality of life and the quality of our schools. We need more schools, and a capital program is in negotiation with the County Commission. There will be a bond referendum, and both boards will be in strong support of that. And when it's the right time, I will come back to you and ask you for your support as well. I did want to share with you one thought that's going on in the legislature. There are a lot of things happening in the legislature regarding your schools. And one that I'll share with you tonight is the idea that there is a bill that will transfer the ownership of all of the school buildings and lands, as well as the responsibility for designing and building future schools to the County Commission. The school board will have no responsibility, and the way the legislation is written, it will have no control or actual input into the schools that are designed in the future. A couple of consequences from this legislation would include a disconnect between the instructional program that drives the design of our schools today and how the schools are designed. The school board will have no input into that based on the legislation. The other thing would be the location of schools. Not sure how location of future schools will be determined. And then another aspect of this legislation is that all the existing joint use agreements that the school district in Cary have modeled for years will be rendered null and void and have to be renegotiated between the county and the municipalities. So there are a lot of changes in this bill, and there are other legislation as well, but I wanted to make sure that you and the citizens of Cary understood clearly what the potential negative impacts of this legislation might be about our relationship between our 2 boards and about the quality of programs that we are able to offer in Cary. I thank you for your time. I look forward to working with you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. I would invite the next speaker forward at this time.
Good evening, Council. My name is Robert Campbell. For full disclosure, for everybody's benefit, I'm a member of your Information Services Advisory Board. I also work with the Technology Tank here in Cary, and I represent about 600 homes in Oxford Hunt. So I come to you tonight to talk to you about your recommendation that staff made. I was very disappointed to see that the Operations Committee that met on April 4th made recommendations to, in my viewpoint, curtail and restrict the community involvement with town council, boards, and commissions. What I'd like to bring to your attention is that I do understand that state law prohibits you, as members, elected body, from meeting electronically. However, I believe staff has done research and has indicated that no such restrictions exist for the appointed boards. And I think that for us to get more citizen involvement, we should look at ways to improve and encourage the use of electronic technology to get more people engaged, not just with the boards and commissions, but even with this council. So what I'd like to point out is there was a request for a public outcry. So this is it. And I would like to remind the council that just some weeks ago, a citizen was here addressing this council in a hurried fashion because he had to catch the last bus home and rushed out after making his comments. This is a person who could benefit from attending a meeting electronically without having to have that burden of being down here. It's not always easy or convenient to get to downtown Cary. So in addition to that, this is really about more open access. Let's get more citizens involved. Let's find more creative ways. And I encourage you to work with your boards to find those ways that we can improve how we communicate with the citizens. So the one thing I wanted to lay at your feet is I expect leadership from you. I don't believe that in our state that we have a current example of leadership in this area. And I'd like to see my town be a leader in this space, in finding new, creative, and effective ways to get citizens more engaged. So I do encourage you to consider, I know it's later on the agenda, to please consider adopting the staff recommendation and further to show leadership by finding ways to get the community involved in these council meetings, even at this very forum right here. I'm not so sure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that I need to be physically standing here to talk to you. I know the technology exists, and I ask for your help, your support, and your leadership in this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker for public speaks out.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Town Council and staff. My name is Dan McFarland. I stand before you tonight representing the town's Environmental Advisory Board. As representing as chairperson of that board, I have the privilege to stand before you tonight to represent the board and this group of citizens that are committed to see Cary strive to become a sustainable community, motivated to conserve and enhance our natural resources through comprehensive, innovative, and measurable policies and programs and outreach activities. Tonight, the EAB would like to recognize one of those efforts and thank the council and members of the town staff for their ongoing support. Fire Station Number 2 represents a continuation of the town's efforts to maximize the energy efficiency in town buildings and operations, and the benefits we derive from both reducing energy usage as also reducing the operating costs associated with that. And in Fire Station Number 2, we continue to maximize the performance of the facilities while reflecting upon prudent financial management of our resources as we all work to achieve the goals of the town's strategic energy action plan. Using items such as life cycle cost analysis, advanced commissioning, performance standards for energy and water consumption are all prudent management practices, and we're excited to see them continuing in this project. With the council approval tonight to move forward with the awarding of the contract for design and construction of administrative services for Fire Station 2, the relocation project, we continue in our efforts to be sound financial and environmental stewards of our resources. Beginning with the performance standards and features that are becoming incorporated in the soon-to-be-completed Fire Station Number 8, the recently completed improvements of lighting, HVAC systems, and the building envelope improvements in our existing fire stations. Fire Station Number 2 will continue to demonstrate our commitment and our leadership by example for everybody in the town. Who could be a better beneficiary of these buildings that have improved comfort, indoor air quality, and overall work environment than our community's first responders who have to live and work in these buildings 24/7. The EAB would like to thank Fire Chief Alan Kane and his staff, the staff of the engineering department, and especially Susan Parker, and of course, Emily Barrett, the town sustainability manager, who is spearheading the town's strategic energy action plan. Thanks to everybody for making a difference in their commitment to improving the energy performance of all town facilities. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker for Public Speaks Out. Anyone else for Public Speaks Out? Seeing no one, I'll close Public Speaks Out and we'll move to public hearings. We're now to agenda item E, and it's the annexation public hearing. Mr. Nicholas of our staff will present both annexations, 13A03 and 13A04. We're going to open up the public hearing for both, and council will not take action on 13A03 tonight. It will be on our May 23rd council meeting for final action. Council may take action on 13A04. Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you. Good evening, council. First petition, 13A03, is a request for annexation of approximately 25.9 acres of property located off Carpenter Fire Station Road, approximately 800 feet south of the intersection with Cary Glen Boulevard. Site is in Cary's ETJ and it's currently zoned mixed use. Request is associated with the site plan number 13 SP10, which is a proposed development of 150 townhomes. Next petition, 13A04, is a request for annexation of approximately 19.8 acres of property located on West High Street, about 1,000 feet southwest of the intersection with Southwest Cary Parkway. Property is in Cary's ETJ and it's currently zoned residential A conditional. Request is associated with a subdivision plan, 12 SB07, which is a proposed development of 38 lots. This concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. This time I'll open up the public hearing for both of these annexations, and I would invite the first speaker forward at this time. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions. And we can make a motion on 13A04 if council wishes to do so.
Make a motion to approve annexation petition 13A04.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Ms.
I was just going to make a motion. That's
Okay. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. We now move to committee reports. This is item G1A, use of technology to enhance the Town of Cary meetings. Mrs. Robinson, as the committee chair, will allow you to share the committee's recommendations, and then Mrs. Rowland is available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. The only two members were at the meeting, and I think Lori sorely regrets not being there to discuss this. But we were presented options for allowing people to dial in remotely or, participate in the meeting from a remote site. And we were in particular thinking about conference calls. And our concerns were basically that we were concerned that first staff was saying that they did not want to have a requirement that someone had to notify staff if he was missing the meeting and attending via a remote site. And we felt like there were problems with that because we may have trouble meeting a quorum and not knowing if a quorum was going to be met if there was uncertainty about whether someone was just running late or not coming at all or dialing in. So our first thought was that we believed that it was important for there to be a requirement for someone to check in to the staff and say, I will be dialing in remotely for this meeting. We were also concerned that there was no limit on how many meetings a person could participate in via a remote access. For those of us who've participated where someone calls in, it's a little bit more disruptive. We were having a hard time understanding what it would be like if the majority of the board was participating remotely and how that conversation might ebb and flow differently if people were not present. The thought that Mr. Smith and I had, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what we discussed was that given the fact that we have limited number of seats on these boards, and these boards typically only meet once a month, we felt that it was appropriate to require people to attend most meetings and give each member an opportunity to attend remotely one time a year. That way it wouldn't overburden staff with numerous calls in of people saying, I'm going to come in remotely. If you are in charge of one board and you have one phone call a month or a couple phone calls a month, it's not going to be that bad, not burdensome on staff. So that was the direction that we went, and I will pass it over to Lori because she has some reservations about the way we were thinking.
Mrs. Bush.
I appreciate it. And first off, when it comes to this discussion around electronic meetings, I'd like to do a level set. But first, I want to thank Councilmember Robinson and Smith for muddling their way through something that they don't have the kind of day-to-day experience that some of us do. So I really appreciate your openness and willingness to think about this kind of out-of-the-box thinking. You're right, I wasn't able to make the operations meeting. It was spring break. But I did watch it. I did watch the operations meeting on YouTube, and I would like to thank staff. It's my one opportunity. Thank staff for improving the YouTube quality, because the video quality and the sound quality really made it possible for me to hear your full discussion. So for those of us who do participate or watch afterwards, they've done a great job doing that. If it's okay with you, I'm going to do something kind of crazy. I'd like to look at this not as a technology item at all. I know you're shocked, but rather as a continued method for us to open up government. You know, we just had Sunshine Week. We've talked about transparency. What this I'd like to do is to think about this as a way for us to open up government access to more of our volunteers and more of our citizens. If there's just one person out there that wants to participate, whether it's a gentleman who has to catch the last bus, or someone who's home with a sick child, or as we have on the ISB, many technology professionals who travel for a living, they're lucky enough to be chosen for a volunteer board or commission. I don't want to stop them from participating in government. So what I'd like you all to consider is, at the ISB, of which I'm the liaison, this group includes, just as an example, a number of working professionals whose jobs require them to travel. They're hard-working, we've had one today, committed professionals who offer a lot of experience and value and wealth to this town. And they have a passion for improving communications. And they and several members of the Park and Rec have asked for this capability. So what this does, and if we can look at it from the not technology standpoint, and I know that's way hard for me to do, it embraces a way for people from all walks of life to attend board meetings as participants, as active citizens, whether they can come to town hall or not. And it allows people and folks with disabilities who have difficulty traveling or difficulty seeing the information to watch. And it really does open up government to everyone by providing citizen engagement to any of our citizens, and eventually from anywhere to any device. So with that, I understand your concerns. I'd love to talk through them. But my experience has been, if someone has gone through the effort and the passion and the application and the School of Government, many of them are volunteers or School of Government graduates, they want to participate. I think it's very rare when we ask somebody that missed a meeting why they missed a meeting. It's either business travel or a child sick. My experience with these volunteers is, if there's any possible way, they'll come, they'll participate. And that's why they've been chosen as volunteers. So I just put that out there for consideration and let the rest of the council make comments before I make a motion.
Other comments?
I do have some concerns that this is kind of heading down a slippery slope. Could be open to the idea of limiting it to one meeting per year. I think that's fair and reasonable. I think that takes into consideration extenuating circumstances or emergencies that arise. But bottom line, you give people an answer, they're going to take you a mile. I mean, you're going to have people going, phoning it in, or, you know, most wouldn't, some would. I agree with the comment. We have dozens of people that apply for our boards and commissions, and, you know, if you can't make the meetings, then maybe you want to think about getting off that commission and letting somebody else that maybe has a little more time participate. We have email, we all have telephones. I don't see how citizens aren't able to participate in the process, whether they're here or not. That's my comments. I just see this as going down a slippery slope that I don't want to go down. I appreciate the efforts. I don't know that you'll get much more participation or involvement out of this. I think you'll end up getting a lot of people going to their kids' soccer game instead of your board meeting.
Mr. Yerha.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Before I knew what the Operations Committee decision was, I was just reading through this report ahead of time, I certainly was leaning toward option 3, the staff recommendation. Hearing the reasons why you went with option 2 and limiting it to the 1 a year, that makes sense to me. And I'm okay with that. I would like to see us get to option 3 perhaps at some point, see how option 2 works. But the recommendation really has 2 parts. You have the board participation, which was option 1, 2, or 3. Then you have the public participation, which is A or B. And you chose B. I haven't heard a reason why you didn't take A. And I wondered whether there could be a way we could do 2A instead of 2B.
Okay.
So I don't know, Jennifer or Jack, if you have a...
Let me let other people comment, and then I'll weigh in on B.
Other comments?
I'd like to hear that first.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah. Well, you know, at the meeting, I'm really kind of neutral to it. And, you know, just as someone that traveled a lot and did use a lot of this technology, of course, back then, you had to crank it to get it started and all that kind of stuff. And the laptops were this big. But you know, a lot of times these things sound so good in theory, that's so passionate, you know, allow people to call in. You've heard the person that public speaks out, you know, it opens up. And I was really skeptical that the purported benefit would really be that much versus the challenge to staff time. That's all. I mean, I didn't really feel that strong either way. If we're thinking of doing something, you know, my only thought would be that we have some kind of a sunshine to it and we revisit it. Is it really doing what it intended? That's the only thing. Because, again, it sounds so good in theory. You know, since the meeting, I've talked to people on several boards that have said, you know, that they were very supportive of that. That didn't really come out that strongly at the meeting, that there was that level of interest from, I think it was not only ISAB, but I think Parks and Rec. I could be wrong on you know, that one. But the point is, there seems to be interest. We have a desire for demonstrating technology leadership. But, you know, I think, you know, Don, you bring up some great concerns. I mean, it is a slippery slope, and I just question if the option is that I have to go to the meeting or I can just, you know, watch the final episode of Dallas and phone in, you know, those are the kind of things that I worry about the abuse. Now, I may be wrong on that. You know, I just really don't have a strong feeling on it. I will say that if we're going to move forward, I really think we should have a sunshine law and look at, is it working? That's all. You know, that's my thought on it.
May I just offer just a bit more of detail? And I was lucky enough to participate on the technology task force as their liaison, both in the room and one time electronically participated. We did run several pilots. I can't remember how many meetings we ran, but maybe 3 meetings of the technology task force that were run in the room while also having people calling in electronically. In fact, several members of staff also participated in that way so that they could get a feeling of what it would take. And maybe I'm a glass is half full kind of gal. I think most of the things that I've seen in our volunteers is that if they can be here, they will be here. I think of them as committed citizens, just like we're committed to be here. If there's any possible way that they can have the camaraderie, the social aspect, to be physically in the room, I think they will. I think that highly of our citizens. Maybe that's a bit jaded, But I did also see people who were traveling, who called in on the technology task force. One of those weeks I was traveling, and I still felt part of the group. There was hardly any disruption. I could still see them on video. They still asked me and chatted with me over that methodology. I saw the presentation. We even shared a couple of whiteboards, just like I was in the room. And at the end of that experience, we polled everyone in the room. And that's why that was also part of their technology task force recommendation. Now, I'd like to pull that out of the equation and say that, you know, that's my experience. I use it also, I'm a little jaded, I use it every day, all day. So I'm used to that, and I saw staff really stepping up and finding new ways of working with people to make sure that it wasn't disruptive, that people were really calling in for a reason. And I just see this as a huge opportunity for us to take a leadership position. And, you know, honestly, if it's not working after a year, let's come back to the table. Let's measure its effectiveness. Ms. Adcock.
Can I ask a question about option B? Is it do not allow the public to electronically participate, or do not allow the public to electronically attend? Because our citizens don't actually participate in meetings anyway. And I know that Parks and Rec has had kind of a public speaks out piece before, not always a part of that committee. I've been the liaison to public art. They always offered any citizens in the room an opportunity to speak to an issue if they wanted to. And rarely over that 2 years was there anyone there to speak. I've been the liaison, so that was my question. It's really attend, not participate, right?
No, in this case, many of the boards do have a public speaks out section. So again, it's up for discussion, but there would be a potential possibility down the road to offer.
Down the road, but not at the beginning, is that right?
Well, how I define, and I'll ask Ms. Rowland, how I define participate is two-way, but I'll ask Ms. Rowland.
The way the staff report is written is we would still give each board flexibility to determine the level of public participation. For those boards who have a public speaks out portion on their agenda, they could invite public who participate electronically to make comments, just like someone in the room.
So they would establish their needs, and they would establish some kind of policies about how long the person has and that kind of thing. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And the other thing I would say is, having been the liaison to 3 boards at this point and seeing the level of passion these people have about the board they're on, we may have, there's abuse of every rule, but I don't think that would be just based on my experience, I don't think that would be the prevailing thing. These people are just absolutely passionate about what they do, serving the town. So I'm, treating people for hypertension and things like that, I believe in a stepwise approach to any change, where you try something, you see if it works, you measure, you say this works, this doesn't, now we change this, we change that. I'm in favor of moving forward with allowing participation of board members at least once a year, because to me that is a reasonable step. And then we measure in a year and we say, how's that working? Is everybody taking a one turn in a year because they can? Whereas before, and I think we're going to have some measure before this, if this were to pass, we'd have to have some measure beforehand to see how many people were missing meetings, to see, has that really changed? Are they now not missing, they're attending by phone, or are they missing and attending by phone? I think it's a slippery slope when you start trying to qualify an absence that's good enough to be used for being able to use technology to be there, because some of us travel a lot in our work, and that's just part of life. If you have a sick child, and you need to be home with your child, but they're not so sick you have to sit right by their bedside, that's you could qualify that as a reason. So, I would have to say I can go with the committee's recommendation at this point, with the change of adding citizens an opportunity to participate. I mean, I think if we're allowing them to participate in person, if our technology would allow it, what I read in the staff report seemed to indicate only 20 people can be, if we use conference calling, only 20 people can be on at a time. Is that correct?
That's what we currently have, and staff would manage that so that we wouldn't create frustration.
Right, so that if you had, for instance, how big is Parks and Rec, Don? how many people on that board? 14. Big, like let's say 14. Okay, so let's say you have 2 people who couldn't make it out of the 14, and that leaves 18 slots for citizens. So it almost have to be like when you're signing up for your yoga class, and if you're number 21 and you're out of luck because you can't get in. So that's going to take, some staff work, and it sounds like the staff is willing to do that.
We are.
I think it's worth a shot.
So am I hearing you like 2B, not 2A?
I like 2A. It would be 2A, yeah, which is what I believe Mr. Yerha was speaking so eloquently for.
I kind of like committee's recommendation of 2B myself. I think if the public is that passionate about something, they can make a phone call, send an email.
Ahead of time.
Exactly.
Well, I'm not.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing. I don't check email on council meeting day, period.
Because you get some.
If you can't get to me before 12 hours of this meeting, then tough. I mean, I think when it's really important to somebody, they make the effort and they get you information or their thoughts and comments well ahead of time.
I think, I think part of our discussion, just so I can convey it fully, was about the disruption to the meetings. I participate on several boards. One of these boards allows a high number of attendance via calling in. It's not a screen, so I don't know if it's as sophisticated as what you've been doing with your ISAB or the Technology Task Force, but doing a conference call. And we all thought we wouldn't be using it that much. It's very frequent that it gets used, and it's fairly disruptive to have somebody calling in. You hear their background noise, you have to remind them, we can hear your contractor in the background there, can you put yourself on mute? We have a lot of those kind of conversations. Today I was in a conference call with 5 other individuals, and someone was driving while he was on his conference call, and every time like there was a truck noise or something, it mutes everybody. When you have, I don't know how this is set up here, but for ours, every time someone makes a noise, everybody else is muted automatically. So all the truck noise and everything was causing the main speaker to be muted out repeatedly. And we had to stop the meeting and remind everybody, unless you're the main speaker, put yourself on mute so that we can hear the main speaker. It was very disruptive, and it frequently is very disruptive. It's something that we kind of like grit our teeth and get through because we have to talk, and we're coming from different parts of the state for this conversation. Because we are not asking people to traverse long distances, to get to a council meeting. I know you're saying people are traveling for work, but I don't know that a disruption to the meeting warrants having people having that public input via the phone. Unless you're going to have them call in, they say their 3 minutes, and then they're out of there. But if you're trying to entertain many speakers at the same time so everybody can hear what's going on, at that point I'd say just if you care that much about it, come on in and sit in the seat and watch it. It's just, I find those conference calls to be, I don't think the technology as far as phone conference calls is sophisticated enough to make it pleasant for the meeting. Now, Lori, you may have
a totally
access
different
to
experience.
other technology that maybe is more sophisticated, and so it's not as disruptive. But
and I have to give staff a great deal of respect. With what we're trying to do here is to talk about the concept of open government at no additional cost to the town. That's really what this discussion is about. We have something in the town that's already part of their conference calling services, which doesn't increase, and there might be a little bit of staff time, 5 minutes to set up the call, but what's being brought to you today is how can we expand government without any additional cost? Now we haven't yet reviewed them here, but there are technology task force recommendations that take that to the level where everything you're talking about, disruptions with phones, et cetera, don't exist in that technology. But there's a cost associated with that. Not only the technology task force recommendation, but many citizens have expressed an interest in that. And I hear what you're saying. If you live in Cary, you don't have a job that requires you to work or that takes you out of the town, or,
requires
I'm
you to
sorry,
work outside.
travel, sorry.
Because I want that job.
Sorry, that requires you to travel for work, and sometimes at the last minute notice. I mean, I know many times that, we'll hear from someone on the ISAB who said, I blocked this, but something came up at work. I still think there's a lot of value to providing an option for those people who, one, are very passionate, and two, with enough front work by staff of, listen, when you get on the call, go on mute, unless you're not speaking. There's a way for us to test this very simply, very easily, until we at the table can decide, is it worthwhile to use one of these other technologies, which, by the way, reduces all these other problems that you're talking about. By the way, we had none of those problems on the technology task force.
I think, the way Gale described it as far as phasing it in, so you take a bite of it and you say, how does this work? Yeah, this works. Okay, we can open it up to a greater extent. I think the way you described it is good. What I'm talking about is, do we want to allow 18 to 20 portals open for people to come who are not members of that board, who are just interested and want to participate via the phone? Do we want to do that given the amount of disruption that can occur with the technology that we have today? Or do we want to just take two and start and work the system and try to figure out how it works with allowing the board members to call in, and then once we kind of get that under our belt, then go and add the citizen participation piece. We're not saying no. I'm not saying no forever. I'm just saying, with the technology we have right now, wanting to add no cost at this time, and not understanding exactly what the implications are to having this type of technology used. I think it's probably what we'll have is phone conversations, right? It's like what we've had with council meetings before work sessions, right? Where people are calling in, they're not going to have any kind of visual component to it.
That's correct. For the board and commission meetings, it's a conference phone system where members participating electronically would dial a certain number to connect by audio, and any visual materials that would be needed for participation, we would provide them via the internet on our website in advance.
Okay, that's exactly what my boards do. So you can walk along with.
So basically, baby steps. Let's try it out with boards and commission members, maybe for a year, see how it works. If it works out okay, it's not a drain on staff resources or financial resources, then maybe we could expand it to include citizens. I can support that. To me, this is just going too far, too fast. We can all remember council meetings and work sessions specifically. When a council member often would call in, and it was very disruptive, very frustrating. It really changes the dynamics of the meeting, and I don't know. I see a lot of board members sitting around a table with a lot of phones on it, getting really frustrated really fast.
Well,
ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go with the Operations Committee recommendation, which was 2B. If I have.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Before we have discussion, I just want to clarify with the town clerk. This is an ordinance amendment that would require 2/3?
The committee's recommendation includes an ordinance amendment. To pass that tonight would require 5 affirmative votes. If you don't get 5 affirmative votes, our practice is to bring that item back to you at your next council meeting agenda, and at that time, simple majority passes it.
Okay. Everybody understand that?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts yet after listening to all this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I felt that 2B made the most sense. But, for all of you following the paper, there's a lot of articles and discussions in the last 48 hours about management being open to change and looking at things differently. And I truly am torn on this. Part of it is I feel like I have a lot of seasoning about the horror stories that we're talking about with Don and Jennifer. But, at the same time, if there's no cost, additional hard cost, you know, I'm sure there's going to always be some soft cost in the sense of staff time and that. And we review it again in a period of time that we can either improve it, correct it, or modify it. Like, I'd like to see something, if we don't go with 2B, I'd like to see something that would have some type of sunset law that we revisited at a certain period of time. And I just think that this is a tough one. I'll just leave it at that.
Other comments? Okay, takes 5 votes to pass.
Let's make sure we all understand what we're voting. So it's 2B.
B.
Is that right? Okay.
Everybody good? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion fails. Do we have an alternate motion, or do we wait till the next council meeting?
Alternate motion.
Okay.
Go ahead and make it.
Okay. I move approval of option 2A.
Second.
There's a motion and second. This also requires 5 votes?
Yeah, because it's
yes.
still an ordinance amendment.
Clarification.
May I ask a clarifying question? The committee's recommendation clearly stated that a member participating electronically would not be counted towards a quorum and would not vote. I'd like some clarification on this motion in that regard as well, please.
Well, I'm reading option 2, and it says, oh, okay. Because it says there they would be counted for a quorum and would be allowed
The
to
committee's
vote.
recommendation specifically was that they would not.
Not, which would be option 1. Okay, so
With more stipulations.
I'd like to withdraw my motion. Ed, would you withdraw your second?
I will do so.
Okay. I'll make a new motion. I move approval of option 1A.
So that I understand.
Because what that says is you have to
Do
be
we have a
present
second?
to be a
Yeah, I
quorum.
was- I guess we just recorded it wrong.
Do we have a
It's
second?
2A.
Yeah.
I must have said it wrong at the meeting, too.
Yeah,
It's 1A.
because that's not what you intended. That's not.
We have a motion. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second it for
Okay.
discussion.
Let me speak to my motion, please. That's a big leap. That's not even a baby step.
Right.
That's a real big
Huge.
step. And I'm not prepared to take that one. I do think to begin with, you know, you got to have more skin in the game. And the skin in the game is having a say into what happens. And that means being present. So I think if we do this for a year, and I agree with Mr. Smith, whether we put it in here or we just have an understanding about checking it again in a year and have some data to back it up, to say whether it's successful or not, where the pain points are, if there are any. I think that requiring people to be present, to be part of the quorum in voting is a reasonable thing to do on the front end at the beginning.
Do you have a year time limit in this motion?
I do not. Do I need one, or can that be an understanding?
I'd like to see it.
Is it your concern, Mr. Smith, that it's not, if it's not in the motion, that it won't happen? Because I trust Ms. Rowland. And I know you're not saying you don't. I would not imply that, because she'd hurt you. But,
Well, without it, it sunsets. I mean, without it doesn't sunset.
That's right, it just
With
goes on.
It sunsets.
well, we take a look at our ordinances all the time. So to me, it feels like it's part and parcel of what we do anyway. But if it makes everyone else feel more comfortable, of course I'll add that. If it gives you greater comfort.
Okay, so we have an amendment, and that's agreed to.
Okay, so then it would be, I move approval of option 1, and to be clear about that, it's a minimum of 2 business days advance notice to the staff liaison. Members could electronically participate. You'd have to be present to be counted as part of the quorum and to vote. And this amendment would be reviewed in 1 year.
And it would pertain, each member could attend one.
One electronic meeting a year.
Yeah, we didn't say that in the language there.
So that's option 1, and the option A would be to allow citizens to participate electronically in these meetings as well, per each board's specified designated policies.
Okay?
How's that sound?
Yep. Discussion?
Is that,
I just
does that
would
increase
like
your
to make,
comfort
yeah,
level?
I just want to make one, I guess, several points. I understand the reticence to go from a small step, or as you said, baby steps to a leap. And I do understand council members' concern with that. I think I come from a different place where I participate and I am on video all the time, every day, that there is, for me, there is no difference to when you see me on a screen or you are sitting next to me in a meeting. I'm going to give the same level of input. And I'm afraid that we've created a second class of citizen if they're participating by phone where their vote doesn't count and they're not part of a quorum. So that's my concern, that we've now said, well, you can basically listen in, maybe even participate, but what you say doesn't really have any merit when it comes down to the vote. So I hear what you're all saying, and I understand your concerns. I absolutely understand them, but I'm afraid that we've created a second-class citizen in that respect, and I'd love to see us remove that.
I would just say one doesn't need a vote to have influence. And the only thing you have to look at to believe that is to watch what happens at Public Speaks Out and at public hearings. When people come to us and tell us, you know, they give us facts and they give us perspective, they have no vote, but they have a great deal of influence on what we do. So I agree with you that when one is I participate in conference calls and WebEx all the time, but most of the time votes aren't taken. And so it truly is a give and take, and it's a conversation. It's a totally different dynamic. I think, again, I would just state, I think it's a reasonable step to take at the beginning. It's not any attempt to disenfranchise anyone, but I do believe that you can be a full participant even if you don't count towards a quorum and you don't vote, because you influence people through what you say and the information that you offer.
Okay. I mean, I understand the passion of the, the second-class citizen, but I got to tell you, I just don't see it that way. If we miss a meeting, we can have our voice heard, but it's just the reality is the vote doesn't count if you're not here. There is something to be said for being physically present. What we're trying to do, and I think what you're saying, I'm not going to, from my perspective, what I hear is we recognize that it's a mobile society. We recognize people around. We recognize there's those balances, and we're trying to open it up so that you can still be heard. But there is an obligation to be present. Now, if times change and we want to look at that differently down the road, fine.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that might change over time. And maybe, Laura, you could be so on the money on this, and we might just be just anxious about change. I don't know. But I think where my comfort level tonight is with the motion that I made. But I'm not going to cry over it if it fails and something else comes up.
Understood.
Ms. Yerha?
Yeah. Philosophically, Lori, I agree with you with option 3 there, but due to the comments I've heard tonight and thinking about this and the fact that we will revisit this, I mean, I'm very comfortable with 1 versus 3. My major hot button is that we allow the public to participate as much as possible. Mr. Campbell's example of the guy who had to leave to make sure he caught the C-train, or we have disabled folks who can't easily get out to the meeting. So my major concern is the A and B part, not the 1, 2, and 3. I think if we start with 1, I'm thinking we're going to get to 3 at some point. But I really like the option A to allow the public to participate.
I would hope we never get to option 3, quite frankly. Allow all members the option to electronically participate in their meetings with no advance notice to staff liaison. We want to do that, really?
Well, let me
I don't see
I
the
don't
argument
think we do right
for creating a second class of citizens at all. I think it's an emotional argument. Again, I think everybody has the ability and can contact council, staff, or boards at any time they so desire. And quite frankly, we see that every day. We get emails, we get phone calls. I think Gale's motion is reasonable. Personally, I'd, would have liked to have gone with the 1B, but we'll try it and see how it works out and go from there.
I think it's a reasonable motion.
Allowing people to vote electronically, ooh, that is such a slippery slope. I mean, I can't speak to the boards and commissions, but I can tell you a previous council member would have called in everything. And we are not going there.
Okay.
Well, let me just say real fast, I think as we go through this process, it'll be very important for us to clearly explain to anyone who's calling in that we'd like them to have it on mute, that they'll be notified when it's their turn to speak. They'll speak, and then they're instructed to immediately turn it back to mute. And we have to set some ground rules that'll make it easy for everybody to participate and have a good dialogue through the meeting. So
It's good. We have the ground rules for public speaks out when we're
Right.
physically here.
Exactly.
Ground
Same-
rules for
same thing.
It's excellent.
But I do think your motion's very reasonable. Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion.
May I ask for a clarification? Ms. Rowland probably got this, but it wasn't clear to me if the one time a year was part of the motion.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
And one more clarification, Mayor Pro Tem Adcock. With either option, staff is seeking an amendment to the policy pertaining to council's electronic participation, just to add a little housekeeping language to match our current practice, not change the way we do
I understand,
things.
to make it, to clarify, yes.
Okay.
I think we're all good on that.
And we require 5 votes for this motion to pass.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 6 to 1.
You voted against technology?
Yeah, I voted against it because I wanted 3A.
That's good.
Poor Lori.
Thank you, Council.
I want to see
So
the
that
blog.
it's noted, I wanted 3A,
He's out.
right?
Thank you, Council, for
Like
that.
Don's philosophical votes.
We're going to move now to item G2A. It's the architectural standards clarification. Ms. Frantz is the committee chair. We'll allow you to share the committee's recommendation, and Mr. Hales is available to answer any questions.
Thank you. After discussion at the Planning and Development Committee meeting, we actually chose option 2. We felt that it gave us the greatest assurances of quality in our development and pretty much clearly spelled out what we were looking for and what we hope to achieve. No interpretation issues. Basically just says all the sides of the building got to meet our design guidelines.
Okay.
I like it.
How about a motion? If we're all in agreement. Anyone?
Yep. Move approval of the Planning and Development Committee's recommendation approving clarifications to the application of architectural design standards as follows. Number 1, which would be option 2. Number 2, revising the transparency percentage requirement to read as it is noted in the agenda. And number 3, the same.
Second.
There's a motion, second discussion.
I'll just say this is a classic example of going back and looking at an ordinance and revising it and tweaking it to improve it. We set up our transparency rules several years ago and got a taste of what would happen when we did that, and now we're back there kind of shoring it up and making it better. And I think your committee did a great job at coming up with a good recommendation.
And I would just like to add what I said at P&D is that I appreciate the staff always coming to us and saying standards should be clear, but give you wiggle room where you need it, but there was too much wiggle room in this one, and it was calling for way too much subjectivity. And I think what developers are always telling us they want, which I totally understand from a business point of view, is some consistency and being able to anticipate the outcome. And I think this increases the chances of that.
Absolutely, and one of the comments I made at the P&D meeting was, we understand this will have a cost associated with development. Got it. But I think we've all made it very clear that when we get development in the town, we are looking for high quality. And if that means we have to give a little on density or a little bit on square footage to get that quality, I'm fine with that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we want quality.
Yeah,
And
all 4
I
sides.
think this gets that.
Okay.
Great job, guys.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Hales.
Thank you.
Now, under old and new business, we had item H1 and 2, which was public hearing requesting council reject bids submitted by S.J. Lewis Construction and Dellinger on the Green Level Interceptor and Pump Station Elimination Project. Earlier tonight, under the Operations Committee recommendation to reject all bids on this, it was approved and, wait a minute, I've lost my place, was approved, and the project will be re-advertised. So therefore, it's not necessary to conduct these public hearings. And having said that, we are ready to move to closed session, and I would entertain a motion.
I'd be happy to do that, Mayor. Pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11 sub A3, I move that we hold a closed session to, 1, consult with attorneys employed by and or retained by the town in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorneys and the town. Among other things, the council expects to receive advice concerning the following lawsuits: Panther Creek, Raleigh, LP, and Cary Park Associates, LLC versus Town of Cary and Wake County Board of Election. And number 2, to prevent the disclosure of information that is made privileged or confidential by General Statute 143-318.10 sub E.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in closed session. Thanks. reconvene our council meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.